That's 23 here. We got 4 knives, 4 reviews. Let's get it. All right, the Cold Steel Engage 2.5 inch. This is talking about the blade here. Comes in at $54. You have a 6-inch knife, so it's a small knife with a 2.5 inch blade or 2.22 inch cutting edge. Nice, it's pretty darn thin in the scales at 0.39. Blade stock is super thin at 0.094. That's under a bug out stock. And behind the edge thickness is around 23 thousandths behind the edge. This one has a clip point. I love their aggressive stone wash. I love that Cold Steel does. You have no jimping, but it's a small. I don't even really think you need it. You got a pretty robust tip there up in the front. And this one is in their 4116 stainless steel. From any other company, I wouldn't even bat an eye to that. It's a very low-end budget steel. It's I was reading up on it, and it's supposed to have a little bit better wear resistance than 420HC, which is a super budget-in steel, usually used on super cheap budget knives. But Cold Steel is known for, making some magic sauce with their heat treating and stuff, and I'm very interested to see if, that plays a part here. You do have a sharpening choil that clears the plunge, and you should have a little bit of sharpening light before it starts to widen up. Actually, I think it might go all the way back, so it might be a really good one. And for me, I see this knife as, a cheaper way to experience the new Atlas lock, which is very similar to a Shark lock. It's just not as fidgety as a Shark lock, in my opinion. I own both. It's a pretty cool lock. It's a strong lock. It may even be stronger than the Shark lock. They added an extra pin to it. So, we're putting it through this paces and cutting a bunch of stuff with it. I was kind of worried. It's a small knife, small handle. It's like a 3-finger grip. And it's a thin scaled knife, so I was kind of worried that I wasn't going to be able to do most of the stuff I normally do in the testing. And I was quite surprised. It handled everything fairly well. It sliced very well. It came extremely sharp. Every Cold Steel I've ever gotten has come ridiculously sharp out of box. And it sliced well. I mean, it's not the thinnest behind the edge, but it's got thin blade stock. So it's still going to slice fairly well as long as that edge stays sharp. So overall, my thoughts on the Engage, is it worth the price tag? I would say if you want to experience the Atlas lock and you don't feel like saving up for its bigger brother or a Demco AD 20.5, and you like the overall design and you're not really worried about that price tag, then yeah, go for it. It's a tough little bitty knife. It's a little big knife, as I like to call it, and the steel, handled everything fairly well. Let's see what the edge is like now. Be kind of shocked if it still had an edge on it, but let's see. Might. That's pretty impressive. Now, where I did the majority of that cutting, it's pretty dull up there in the front, but it can still cut. It's got some hang-ups. Not terrible. It's got a few hang-ups up here in the front right here. There's a quick size comparison with the Ontario Rat 2. And like I said, it's lightweight at 1.96 ounces. But if the Atlas lock, doesn't really excite you, then I definitely think there are better knives out there for the same price or, cheaper. But, like I said, it's all going to depend on if you want to try out the Atlas lock. Next up, we have the Bestech Bihai. This is an O-stop held design. It has his design language all over it. Coming in at $63. Bestech quality. They do excellent work, especially on their budget end or more affordable end, their premium stuff. All of its high quality materials and craftsmanship. And this is another little big knife because this thing is only 5.24 inches, but because of that forward choil, I can still get a nice comfortable 4-finger grip. Now this one is on this side right here, so you call it what you want. Now I have a medium-sized hand, so if you have a large, extra large hand, this is probably going to be a little too small for you. And it has a tiny 2.14 inch blade and only 1.76 inches of cutting edge. However, being that this is a hawkbill, it's still a rather useful little blade. You can basically like grab stuff with that tip, do those drag cuts with it. Nice utility blade shape. Going to cut something, and the more you, being that it has a recurve, the more you cut into it, the deeper this belly is going to get into whatever you're cutting. So it's a great little, open it up packages, break down a box, cut a string, or I guess if you wanted to, you could use this in a discreet self-defense manner. If you wanted to make sure they didn't see anything in your hand, you could, whatever. It's got a pulky tip. 14C 28M blade steel. Bestech does a great job with 14C. It's got nice jimping that is functional in two different spots if you want to put your finger at the end, or if you want to choke back like that. Nicely done. They have so many different variations. This one that I have is a two-tone blade with satin on the flats and the swedge, and the gray coating on the flats and on the top spine of the knife. Now, of course, this isn't going to be the funnest knife to sharpen, especially if you use like a fixed angle system, unless you have the curved stones or you use like the corner of your stones. I like to touch mine up on a Spyderco Sharp Maker because they have those diamond rods, and I use the corners. I have to kind of like, set whatever angle it is. They did a really, really good job on this top flipper. It's got that rollover type. It's got some jimping up there. It's nice and snappy with ceramic bearings. You can also, depending on how big your hands are, reverse flick it out of that hole, or you could slow roll it as well. Inset stainless steel liners, very well done, that are skeletonized. Good access to that lock bar. It's nice and comfortable. Very lightweight. This one's coming in at 1.79 ounces. And here's a size comparison with the Ontario Rat Model 2 and the Cold Steel Engaged 2.5. And I think my only nitpicks and complaints on the knife is I don't really like the pocket clip, and it's only tip up, right hand carry only. But overall, it's an excellent top flipper. It's a pretty mean, aggressive little blade, comfortable in hand. So stop held design. So if this is something that you like the overall looks of, yeah, I could recommend this one. Next up, we have the Ganzo Firebird FH924. This one comes in at $29, the best value of the four. It's another small one at 6.3 inches with a 2.5 inch blade and a 2.8 inch grip area. So if you have large, extra large hands, you're going to only get, I get a 3-finger, and I can kind of wrap my pinky around there with my medium-sized hand. Not the biggest knife in the world. So Ganzo does a great job of listening to the community, and they implement all the things that we say we don't like or say wish they had. They do a great job of that, and I think that's why their knives are as popular as they are. Especially, they keep the price as low as possible, and I think you get a lot for your money when it comes to Ganzo Firebird. You have on this one a nice utility Warncliffe blade on here. Excellent for doing precision type drag cuts. You got a very bulky tip that is great for, starting cuts, doing like very intricate cutting. It's got a high flat grind on it. And this one comes down, to around 14 thousandths behind the edge. D2 steel, came with a very, very sharp edge out of box. And excellently executed sharpening choil, because that plunge is way back here. You have a lot of sharpening light before it starts to widen up in the back. You have a small row of jimping. It's semi-functional. It doesn't do a whole lot, but I mean, I'm not where I overshoot that anyway. I didn't really find a need for it. They have peel ply G10 scales that offer a good bit of grip. They're not overly aggressive. You have T8 Torx on your pivot and on the clip screw, but they went with T6 on the body screws. I'm not really worried at this price point. Nice wire pocket clip, and it's tip up left or right hand to carry, and they even put a plate right there so you wouldn't have the hole. You have a lanyard hole for all the lanyard people, and smaller knife like this, I think lanyards make sense, because if you want to have something to grab a hold to, if you make like a a Chinese like knot or something right here to hold on to. In the cutting I did, it was fairly comfortable, and I was actually shocked on how much control I had over the knife. It filled out the hand nicely. It was comfortable, no hot spots that I really noticed unless I was really bearing down on it. You also have a G10 backspacer on this one. Your liners in the inside are skeletonized to save on weight. This one is probably the heaviest of the bunch at 3.01 ounces. When I first got the knife, I was kind of bummed because the action wasn't that great. But I think they had the pivot too tight because I just barely loosened the pivot. Now the action is nice and smooth, nice and snappy. It's riding on bearings. I can get my thumb in there easily. I can slow roll it easily. You have very solid lockup. I don't have any play, any direction. This is the tightest lockup of the bunch when it comes to no movement at all. Good access to that lock bar because it's cut out. That nice little nice little chamfer they got on the lock right there. Good lockup, sitting at around 40%. As far as nitpicks and complaints on the knife, I don't really have anything because I think at $29 they did a really, really good job with this knife. And I think of the bunch, this one I could recommend the most. It's kind of hard to beat at the $29 price point. And it's at $29 right now because it's brand new. It'll probably go down later on once it's been out for a while. Quick size comparison with the Ontario Rat 2 and this Cold Steel Engage 2.5. Lastly, we have the Xtouc XT01A coming in at $33. Does anybody know, are they also Tac Knives? Because Tac Knives has all their knives on their site, or does Tac Knives just sell their knives? I have no idea where the connection is with those two. Just thought that was interesting. This is the largest knife in this group at 7.6 inches. So a nice medium-sized knife for most people, or at least somebody with medium-sized hands. I think it's a nice medium-sized knife. 3.15-inch blade, 3.5-inch grip area, very neutral handle. Blade stock on it's actually kind of stocky at 0.14, and it's coming in around 16 thousandths behind the edge, so nice and slicey blade, but it's gonna it's gonna make its way to full thickness kind of quickly. You have a very needle-like point on this one for poke task. This is a nice harpoon drop point satin finish on here. Nice looking blade. It's gonna be good for a lot of stuff. Do have some jimping up here and a nice spot to rest your thumb. The knife sliced well, and I thought it performed nicely. It does have a sharpening choil, however, that plunge is right up on it, so after you sharpen it, first time it might widen up in the back. However, you can widen that yourself because it has an internal stop pin, so you don't have to worry about the stop pin being in the way or messing up anything. During the cutting, for the most part, I thought it was fairly comfortable. Like I said, you have a neutral handle, so there's no crazy choils or anything. But whenever I did start bearing down in the wood and doing harder cuts, I felt the top of this pocket clip, and for my hands, the frag pattern is a little aggressive. The frag pattern also plays a part putting it out of the pocket because the pocket clip is sitting on top of that frag, so that is going to be a pocket destroyer. But overall, like I said, I thought it was fairly comfortable. Depending on what you plan on doing with it. Hard cutting for prolonged periods might start bothering your hands, but just as an average everyday EDC blade, I think it'll be just fine. Like I said, you have fragged Peel Ply G10, so it is it's definitely going to give you some good grip, but for me is a little uncomfortable. The flipping action on this knife with the traditional flipper works great. It has some jimping right there, skeletonized. I'm sure to try to balance the knife out a little bit better, but you can do the light switch and it comes out nice and fast, and the push button is riding on bearings and it's nice and smooth. It also has a front flipper, but the front flipper is not as comfortable for me, and it's not as easy to do because you see where that flipper, the regular flipper is. Whenever I go to flip it, it hits my finger. If I try to pull back like that, it's not the most comfortable. You could probably see. Yeah, you could do the reach around if you wanted to. That's a little bit more comfortable for me, or a slow roll, so where I can push my hand back. But for me, I enjoy the regular flipping action because it's nice and snappy, and it's fairly drop shut on the closure. Deep carry is tip up left or right handed. They have a little slot right there with a little plate just to hide the hole. You have skeletonized stainless steel liners. and a pretty good weight coming in at 3.04 ounces. The lockup on this one is tight, no up and down whatsoever, no side to side. The lock is sitting at around, I'd say 60%. It hasn't moved over. Now, my biggest complaint on the knife is the access to that lock bar, because it's flush right here and they only give you that little bit of chamfer on both sides. I use this part of my finger and it's fine. It's just not my favorite. So let's quickly recap. Give some more sharpening choil here. The aggression on the frag's a little much. There's no flat spot for the clip to sit. It's going to mess up the pockets, and not a whole lot of access to that lock bar. But at the $33 price point, do I recommend it? Yeah, it's a good knife. They also sent me this one. I'd already reviewed it. This is the button lock, and this one's a lot better than the one that I reviewed. It's got a better spring tension to it, nice snappier action, 14C 28M blade, and Peel Fly G10 on this one. That gives some nice little texture. The other one had smooth G10 on the one that I have. So yeah, both of these good knives. Quick size comparison with the Ontario Rat 2 and the Civivi Elementum. I will have links to all these down in the description. Let me know what you think about this format. I didn't want these to not get reviewed, so let me know how you like the way I set it up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about any of these, feel free to let me know down in the comments. I'll do my best to get to them. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day, and I will see y'all on the next one. Hey, yeah.